Have you ever felt like you're constantly living your life for everyone but yourself? Like your decisions, your time, even your peace of mind, are always tied to what someone else needs, especially your kids? If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. I can't tell you how many folks over 60 I've spoken to who feel like they're still putting themselves last, even after raising a family, working hard for decades, and doing everything right. But here's the truth. There comes a point in life where you have to take your energy back. You've earned the right to make yourself the priority. You don't need to justify your choices, explain your boundaries, or prove anything to anyone, not even to your grown children. And I know that might sound a little harsh at first, but stick with me. This isn't about cutting people off or turning your back on your family. It's about finally putting yourself at the center of your own life and doing it with peace, quiet, and purpose. You see, many of us were raised to believe that selflessness is the highest virtue. We're taught to give, to sacrifice, to always put others ahead of ourselves. And for years, especially when our kids were younger, that was necessary. But what happens when the kids are grown? When they've built lives of their own? Too many of us forget to make that shift. We keep operating as if our role is still to serve, support, and stay small. But here's what I want you to hear loud and clear. You're allowed to stop explaining yourself. You're allowed to stop waiting for approval. And most importantly, you're allowed to do things just because they feel right for you, not because someone else needs them to make sense. Think about how many times you've hesitated to make a change or try something new because you didn't want to upset the balance. Maybe you've wanted to move, take up a hobby, start dating again, or simply have more alone time. But the moment you started thinking about it, you also started thinking about how your kids would react. What would they say? Would they understand? Would they support you? And before you know it, you're putting your own happiness on hold again. It's time to stop doing that. Not because your kids are bad or selfish, but because this stage of life is yours. You've already given them the best of you. Now it's your turn. That quiet pull you've been feeling to do something for yourself, to step away from the noise, to create a life that feels peaceful and grounded. That's your soul trying to reclaim its space. And let me tell you, silence is powerful. There's something deeply freeing about no longer needing to explain or defend your choices. When you stop broadcasting your plans and start living for yourself, quietly, intentionally, you begin to notice something extraordinary. The pressure. If I choose myself, I'm abandoning others. But none of that is true. Rest is a form of self-respect. Saying no is an act of self-preservation. Choosing yourself is the beginning of true freedom. And yes, it might feel strange at first. You might even feel a little selfish. But selfish doesn't have to be a dirty word. In fact, I'd argue that healthy selfishness, the kind that says, "I matter too," is one of the most loving things you can model for the people around you. You show your kids that life doesn't end after 60, that it's okay to grow, to evolve, to protect your peace. You show them how to age with dignity, with clarity, and with quiet confidence. Now let's talk about boundaries. Because part of staying silent and focusing on yourself is learning to create space between you and the things, or people, that drain your energy. And that includes adult children. I say that with love. Sometimes even the most well-meaning kids can unknowingly pull us back into roles we've outgrown. They still come to us with their problems, their crises, their expectations. And while it's beautiful to be needed, it can also be exhausting. You don't have to be available for every phone call. You don't have to fix every issue. You're not their safety net anymore. You're their example. It's okay to say, "I can't help with that right now," or "I need some time for myself today." And you don't have to explain it. You really don't. The more you practice holding that line with kindness but firmness, the more natural it becomes. You'll be surprised how quickly people adjust once they realize you mean it. This is where the quiet focus really starts to shine. Because when you stop spending energy on things that aren't yours to carry, you get to reinvest that energy into yourself. Maybe you start taking longer walks without your phone. Maybe you sit in your favorite chair and read that book you've been meaning to finish. Maybe you pick up that hobby you loved years ago but let go of because life got too busy. These little things, they start adding up. They become part of a life that's centered around what nourishes you, not what's expected of you. You don't need an audience. You don't need applause. You just need your own presence. That's where the magic happens, in the moments no one else sees. Waking up early to enjoy the quiet, sitting in stillness with your morning coffee, saying yes to something that feels good in your bones, even if no one else understands it. It's not about pushing people away. It's about pulling yourself back in, claiming your time, your space, your voice, without fanfare or guilt. When you start doing that, something beautiful happens. You begin to trust yourself again. You stop asking, "Is this okay?" and start saying, and let's be honest, the world around us moves fast. Everyone's got an opinion. Everyone wants to weigh in. But you've lived long enough to know that not every voice deserves your attention. Not every opinion deserves your energy. Staying silent doesn't mean being invisible. It means being grounded. It means being intentional. It means letting your actions speak for you instead of your words. That's where your strength lives now. Not in doing for everyone else, but in quietly becoming more of who you are. Now that you're beginning to reclaim your space, to settle into that quiet strength, you might start noticing something else. The distractions begin to lose their grip on you. The constant noise, the pressure to please, the need to respond to everything, the guilt of saying no, it all starts to fade. And what's left? Just you. The real you. The you that hasn't had time to breathe in years. Maybe even decades. This is where things start to shift. You begin to feel what freedom really means at this stage of life. It's not about doing more. It's about doing less, but with purpose. You no longer need to be everything for everyone. You get to just be. That's powerful. Because when you slow down, when you stay quiet long enough, you begin to hear yourself again. Your thoughts, your needs, your dreams. They were never gone, just buried beneath years of responsibility. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you sat with your own thoughts and truly listened to them? Not the voice of worry, not the voice of obligation, but the voice that says, "I've always wanted to try that." Or, "I'm tired of saying yes when I really mean no." That's the voice of you, waking back up. And it deserves your full attention. Now I know that staying silent isn't always easy, especially in a world that constantly demands noise. We've been conditioned to share everything, to update people on our every move, to explain and justify ourselves. But here's the thing. When you start keeping your peace private, you protect it. You don't have to announce your healing. You don't need to declare that you're changing. Just change. Quietly, gently, day by day. It's a beautiful thing to watch how your world transforms when you stop giving energy to things that don't matter. The drama, the comparison, the unsolicited advice. You don't need to carry it anymore. You can set it down, walk away, focus on what brings you joy, focus on what moves your spirit, focus on what makes your heart feel calm, not chaotic. You've likely spent so many years anticipating the needs of others, you may have forgotten how to check in with your own. That's okay. There's no shame in that. But this next season of your life, it's the season where you get to return to yourself. Not as a parent, not as a partner, not as a caregiver, but as a whole person, worthy of care, attention, and rest. That's the beauty of aging, if you let it be. It's not about slowing down in a way that makes you irrelevant. It's about slowing down in a way that makes you powerful, clear, rooted. It's about choosing what stays in your life and what gently gets left behind. One of the most freeing realizations you'll ever have is this: Not everyone is entitled to your energy. Not every call needs to be returned right away. Not every favor needs a yes. Not every opinion deserves a response. That's not selfish. That's wisdom. When you stop reacting to everything around you, you give yourself the chance to live on your terms. Quietly, intentionally, authentically. And let's talk for a moment about something that may be hard to admit, but needs to be said. Sometimes the people we love most can be the very ones who unintentionally keep us from growing. They want us to stay the same because it makes them feel secure. They want us to keep playing the role we've always played because it benefits them. That doesn't mean they're bad. It just means it's up to you to decide when the script no longer fits. You're not obligated to keep playing a part that doesn't reflect who you are anymore. You're allowed to evolve. You're allowed to need more space, more peace, more time alone. And you don't owe anyone an explanation for that. Because truthfully, your needs are valid, even if no one else understands them. I know it can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you've always been the yes person, the helper, the one who kept everything together. But here's the real question. Who's been keeping you together? You can't keep pouring from an empty cup. At some point, the most loving thing you can do for others is take care of yourself. Fully. Without guilt. Without needing permission. And that's where focus comes in. The kind of deep, centered focus that doesn't just block out distractions, but invites in clarity. Because once you start focusing on what actually matters to you, decisions become easier. You stop second-guessing. You stop over-explaining. You just do what's right for you. Maybe that means downsizing your home and moving somewhere that feels simpler, quieter. Maybe it means turning your phone off for a few hours a day and enjoying time in the garden, or walking the dog without earbuds, just taking in the world around you. Maybe it means taking that class you've always wanted to try, or reconnecting with something you used to love before life got busy. These aren't luxuries. They're necessities. Because without moments that feed your soul, life starts to feel like a series of obligations. You weren't meant to live that way in your later years. These are the years where wisdom meets freedom. And if you honor that, your days become lighter, more intentional, more meaningful. And yes, there will be people who don't understand this new version of you. They'll say you've changed. And you know what? You have. You're becoming more honest, more present, more you. Let them adjust. You don't need to shrink back to make others comfortable. The people who love you, truly love you, will get it. They'll start to see the peace in your eyes, the ease in your voice. They'll see that you're happier. And over time, they may even feel inspired to do the same for themselves. Because that's what happens when one person chooses to protect their peace and focus inward. It creates a ripple effect. You're not just healing for you. You're giving others permission to do the same. But remember, this journey is yours alone. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to prove it. Just keep showing up for yourself quietly and consistently. Let the results speak for themselves. Let your peace speak louder than your words ever could. When you start living like that, on your terms, in your rhythm, with your boundaries, something incredible begins to unfold. You stop chasing things that were never meant for you. You stop apologizing for needing rest. You stop trying to be everything for everyone. And in that space, you become exactly who you were always meant to be. You know, there's a certain strength in showing up for yourself, quietly, consistently, without needing to make noise about it. And if you've made it this far with me, maybe something inside you is nodding along. Maybe you've already started pulling back from the things that no longer serve you. Maybe you found yourself pausing before saying yes, out of habit. That pause, that's progress. That's awareness. That's you beginning to protect your energy. And protecting your energy is no small thing. In fact, it might be one of the most important things you do for yourself at this stage in life. Because once you realize that your energy is limited, that it's sacred, you start becoming more intentional about where it goes. You stop giving it to people who drain you. You stop spending it on arguments that don't matter. You stop wasting it on old stories that no longer fit who you are. You begin to invest it in what truly matters: your peace, your health, your joy. That shift is life-changing. It doesn't require a grand announcement. It doesn't require anyone's permission. It just requires you to show up for yourself day after day, even if no one notices right away. Because here's the truth: most people won't notice the work you're doing to grow. They won't see the inner battles you've won. They might not understand why you're quieter now, more selective, more at ease. But that's okay. You're not doing it for them. You're doing it for you. You're doing it because your nervous system is tired of being overstimulated. Because your mind is tired of carrying unnecessary worries. Because your heart is tired of being pulled in too many directions. You're doing it because you deserve a life that feels good on the inside, even if it doesn't look impressive on the outside. And let's talk about that for a moment. The outside. We live in a world that's obsessed with appearances. We're shown highlight reels, quick wins, big gestures. But the real work? The work that transforms you? It happens in private, in silence, when no one's watching, when you're simply choosing, again and again, to show up with grace and purpose. Maybe it's choosing to eat better, to stretch, to walk, not because someone told you to, but because your body feels better when you do. Maybe it's choosing to spend your afternoon in nature, instead of watching the news or checking in on social media. Maybe it's choosing to forgive someone, not because they asked, but because you no longer want to carry that burden. Those small, quiet choices, they're powerful. They build a new kind of life, one that doesn't rely on approval, applause, or outside validation. You don't need to tell anyone what you're doing. Just do it. And as you do, you begin to trust yourself more. You begin to feel more grounded, more certain, more free. Because confidence, true, lasting confidence, doesn't come from what others say about you. It doesn't come from compliments or recognition. It comes from action. It comes from watching yourself keep a promise to you. It comes from knowing deep down that you can rely on yourself to make the right decisions, even when it's hard, even when it's quiet. And the beautiful thing is, once you stop needing external validation, you start to realize how much noise you were tolerating. How many conversations you didn't actually want to have. How many events you said yes to out of guilt. How many times you shared something just to feel seen? But you don't need to do that anymore. You can sit in your own presence and know that it's enough. When that happens, when you find contentment in the quiet, you start to see the world differently. You stop rushing. You stop comparing. You stop chasing. And in that stillness, life begins to unfold in ways you never expected. New opportunities arise. New clarity takes root. New peace settles in. That's not to say it's always easy. There will still be moments of doubt. Moments where you question whether you're doing the right thing. Moments when someone makes a comment that stings, or a family member expresses confusion about your new way of living. But in those moments, come back to your center. Remember why you started. Remember how much lighter your spirit feels when you're no longer tangled up in everyone else's expectations. And don't be surprised if, over time, the people around you begin to shift too. Not because you tried to change them, but because you changed yourself. You set a new standard, a quiet one. You stopped reacting and started responding. You stopped explaining and started embodying. And that energy, it ripples outward. It influences in the most graceful way. Not through force, not through words, but through example. You may notice your kids becoming more respectful of your time. You may notice your relationships becoming easier, more peaceful. Or maybe, just maybe, you begin to draw new people into your life. People who see you, who value your peace, who honor your growth. But even if none of that happens right away, let this truth settle deep into your heart. You are allowed to live a life that feels good to you. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to protect your energy, to stay silent, to focus on what makes you feel whole. You've spent years showing up for others. Now is your time to show up for you. Not out of rebellion, not out of resentment, but out of love. Because no one else can live your life for you. No one else can give you what you're not giving yourself. And if you're still wondering, is it too late for me to change? Let me remind you, it's never too late to begin again. It's never too late to rewrite the story. You don't need a big reason. You don't need a major event. You just need a choice. A quiet, firm, heartfelt choice to say, I matter too. So sit with that. Let it soak in. Let it guide your next decision, your next moment, your next breath. And when in doubt, that's where you'll always find the answers. The most powerful thing you can give yourself right now is permission. Permission to slow down. Permission to heal. Permission to grow without broadcasting it. You don't need a title, a schedule, or a stamp of approval to begin living life your way. You simply need to begin. Quietly. Honestly. For you. And here's something you may not hear often. You don't owe your kids your entire life. I know that can sound tough. But hear me out. You gave them your time, your love, your sacrifices, your late nights and your early mornings. You raised them, taught them, protected them. And now they're adults with their own lives, their own choices. You did your part. You fulfilled your role. And now your role gets to shift. That doesn't mean you stop loving them. It doesn't mean you abandon your relationship. It means you finally honor your own needs too. Because your value doesn't disappear when your parenting duties change. Your worth doesn't expire after 60. If anything, this chapter, this quiet, reflective, intentional chapter, is the most meaningful of all. You have wisdom now. You have perspective. You've seen what matters and what doesn't. And that gives you a kind of clarity that's rare. A kind of strength that doesn't shout, doesn't demand, it simply exists. It shows up in how you carry yourself, in the way you choose peace over pressure, in the way you no longer feel the need to prove anything to anyone. This is the moment when you become the author of your own days. When your choices are no longer reactions to someone else's needs, but reflections of your own desires. Want to spend the day doing absolutely nothing? Do it. Want to travel solo or take up painting or wake up and just listen to the birds for an hour? That's your right. Your life isn't a performance. It's a sacred space, and you are allowed to fill it with whatever nourishes you. Too often we confuse self-care with selfishness. But let's be honest, what's more selfish? Honoring your well-being or exhausting yourself to keep others comfortable? You can't give from an empty well. And besides, the people who truly love you, they don't want a burned-out version of you. They want you whole. They want you rested, happy, centered. So take care of you, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. Feed your mind with books that make you think. Surround yourself with people who uplift you. Make your home a sanctuary, a space that reflects the peace you're building inside. And don't be afraid to change what no longer fits. Rearrange the furniture. Change your routine. Let go of the old expectations. You're not living by someone else's timeline anymore. And you're certainly not living to keep up appearances. You don't have to explain why you've started doing things differently. You don't have to apologize for needing more time alone. You don't have to justify your happiness. It's yours. You've earned it. There's a quiet beauty that comes with not needing to be seen to feel fulfilled. You stop chasing acknowledgement. You stop waiting for others to notice your progress. Because the real reward isn't in what they see. It's in how you feel. Lighter. Freer. More yourself. That's what happens when you focus on your own journey instead of trying to walk someone else's. You stop comparing. You stop judging. You realize that peace was never outside of you. It was always there, waiting to be claimed. And yes, it takes effort to unlearn old patterns, to set boundaries, to say no without guilt. But every time you choose yourself, you're sending a message to your mind and your heart that you matter, that your needs are not a burden, that your dreams still count. And they do. Maybe your dreams look different now than they did when you were 30 or 40, but they're just as valid. Maybe it's not about climbing mountains anymore. Maybe it's about tending your garden, literally or metaphorically. Maybe it's about deepening relationships, not widening them. Maybe it's about creating more space, not filling every hour. There's so much joy to be found in simplicity, in doing less, but feeling more, in staying silent but hearing yourself more clearly than ever, and in giving to others, not from obligation, but from overflow. Because when you're full, when you're whole, the love you give is richer, deeper, more genuine. You're not here to meet expectations anymore. You're here to live, to breathe, to find meaning on your terms. That's not rebellion, it's liberation. It's the quiet kind of power that doesn't need a stage or spotlight. It just is. So if you've been waiting for a sign to stop shrinking yourself, to stop putting yourself last, to finally say, "This life is mine now," let this be it. Let this moment be your reminder that silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And focus isn't selfishness, it's self-respect. You are allowed to live a life that honors you, fully, freely, without guilt, without apology. Now go do that. Not for your kids, not for your friends, not for anyone watching. Do it for you. You deserve it. And if this message speaks to you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What part of this felt most true for you? What have you been holding back on that you're finally ready to embrace? And if you found this helpful, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Strong Elderly Life. We're here for you every step of the way, quietly, consistently, and always with heart. Here's to living your best life at any age. And here's to the peace that comes when you finally choose yourself. You got this.